Hello and welcome to another episode of How I Like Maths. My name is Nahid. I'm an applied mathematician and the founder of Bungee Pie, helping kids learn maths using storytelling, animation, and real life applications. This show is my own initiative to talk about mathematics and its application in real life. Today I have a great speaker, Robin Aldridge-Sutton. And before introducing him, I would like to ask you to subscribe to this platform and support us to continue this work. Robin is a statistician and data analyst. He likes maths, statistics, data analysis, philosophy, chess, and running. He's from New Zealand and did a bachelor degree in maths and philosophy, honors and master in philosophy from the Victoria University of Wellington. His love for statistics made him to complete another bachelor degree in data science, followed by an honors in statistics from the University of Auckland in New Zealand. Today, he will talk about a powerful statistical app for ecologists. This is part of his research, and I would invite you to listen to it. You did great work with Rachel, and I know you're quite proud of it. And I would like to ask you to share more detail about it. You can also talk about the stuff that you did and use it as well. But I know you're kind of more interested in the work that you've done with Rachel, and you're still working on it and you're still developing it. So if that's possible, give us some background about that, like in quite a simple language that people can get it. No technical things, no formulas, just presentation, simulation. That would be great if you have.
Sure, yeah. So the work is statistical ecology. So ecology is the study of ecosystems.
Right.
And ecologists, one thing they would like to do often is to study a population of animals in the wild. And one of the things they're often interested in is how many of these animals there are in a particular place, a particular population. And so, you'd like to know how many animals are there. You'd like to know if the population is growing or shrinking, how long the animals live, what the birth rates are. These are questions that ecologists are interested in.
Right.
And they're not easy questions to answer because the populations are in the wild. So it's difficult to go out and count all of the animals.
Right.
Difficult or impossible.
Right.
So if you can't count all the animals, how do you estimate how many there are? How do you know if there's more now than there were last year?
Yeah. Particularly for some animals like whales and dolphins and endangered species, I would say that's just more interesting to figure out the population for these particular types of. I don't know.
Oh, that's right. So
it.
that's right. Yeah. So some populations are especially interesting and especially difficult to study. So my co-supervisor at University of Auckland was now assistant professor or associate professor Emma Carroll, and she's in the biology department. She's an ecologist, and she studies whales. So one of the projects that we worked on together was looking at estimating the numbers of southern right whales that are living in the Antarctic islands, sub-Antarctic islands, Auckland Islands.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
I like whales.
Yeah, whales are brilliant, and it's a real pleasure as someone who's a statistician to be able to work on whale populations. So you can imagine how difficult it is to get an accurate measure, an accurate estimate of the number of whales there are in these remote regions. And so that's where the statistics comes in. So there are various ways that you can collect data on these populations and use that data to estimate the number of animals there are there, or the population size. So I can talk about a couple of those methods. So quite an established method is called mark recapture. Probably people may have noticed or be aware that there are animals that you can come across that have been captured and tagged. And the reason, or one of the reasons ecologists do that, is to get an estimate of the population size. So you can capture, you can go out and capture some number of these animals that you're interested in, and somehow mark or identify them, and then release them again. And then you can give some time for those animals to mix back into the population, and then you go out and try and capture some animals again. And the next time you do this, you hope that you'll find some animals that you have tagged or identified before, and some animals that you haven't. And the proportion of tagged and untagged animals gives you an idea of how many animals what proportion of the population you captured the first time. So, if I go out and capture 10 minor birds and put tags on their legs and release them and let them fly away, and then I go out and capture another 10 minor birds, and I find that 5 of them have tags on their legs, then I might think, so now 5 out of 10 have been tagged from this last time. And the first time I captured 10, and maybe that was half of the population. Right, so I could estimate maybe there are 20 minor birds in my little population I'm looking at. So that's a very simple mark recapture study, and you can imagine that you can do more complicated things by repeatedly capturing and tagging animals, using different tags to identify animals that you've captured at different times.
But how you can do that with animals like whales, because it's just hard even.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So whales, as far as I know, we don't generally tag whales. Sometimes we ecologists attach tags to them for more specialized purposes. Like actually, Emma has managed to tag a couple of southern right whales with GPS tracking tags. So these actually send out a signal that a GPS satellite can monitor, and you can actually track the whales over however long the tag stays on their body. Unfortunately, these whales are not, they notice when they've been tagged, and they tend to try to rub the tags off. So
that's why I like them a lot.
Yeah, similar to humans if you try to tag them. So something that Emma does and that we've worked on is she collects DNA samples from her whales, her whale population, and she can use genetic analysis on the tissue samples to identify those whales, so that rather than placing a tag and then recognizing a whale you've seen before from the tag, you can recognize a whale you've seen before from its DNA. Which is very cool and
quite interesting. Yeah, quite interesting.
It is interesting, and it actually opens up other options for estimating the population size, because from the DNA of an animal, you can recognize not only that animal, but you can get a good idea of when you see the close relations, close family relatives of an animal. So the next time you do some more sampling, even if you don't capture that animal again, you might capture its parent or its offspring or its half brother or sister. And if you have, good quality genetic analysis, you're able to it's difficult to know for sure that that these animals have this relationship, but you can have a pretty good idea of it. And you can actually use statistics on the number of close family pairs that you find to estimate population size. So you can imagine if you're finding a lot of closely related animals each time you do sampling, it would give you an idea that the population is not very large, right? Because they're all closely related. So it seems like one small family. Right. On the other hand, every time you do sampling, you're just seeing completely unrelated animals. It gives you an idea that the population is large.
Right.
And we can actually estimate using statistics and maths fairly accurately, and in fact possibly more accurately using these methods than just mark recapture of the same animals. Right. That's something that we've been working on, and comparing these statistical models and comparing the accuracy of the estimates that they give us.
Excellent. Excellent. So would you like to show us some of the work, app, whatever you would like to?
Yeah, I can show you an app that I'm working on. It's a work in progress, and it's fairly complex, but maybe you can get an idea about.
Well, you need to tell us if I'm ecology and I know nothing about maths and stats, like how I can use your tools, your apps, to be able to estimate the population of a specific. Are you working on a specific animal or species, or it's just whatever?
Yeah, so this app has been designed specifically for these whales.
Right.
And the way it works is that it simulates populations of animals. So we create in the computer, we create representations of individual animals breeding and having children over time. Right. And we keep track of how that population grows. So we grow the population at a particular rate, particular amount of time. We keep track of which animals live and which animals die, and who are the parents of each animal. Right. And, from that simulated data, we can then simulate capturing, sampling some of the animals and fitting our statistical models to get estimates of the population size. Because we've simulated the population, we know what the true population size is. Right. And we can compare the estimates from our models to the true population size and see how accurate our models estimates are.
Excellent. Excellent. So if but this study is just particularly worked on whales. Is it possible to reuse it for a different kind of animal?
So at the moment the simulation is designed for these whales. So for example, we only allow a female whale to give birth to one new whale at a time, because whales almost never have twins. They're too big. Right. So a lot of animals are not like that. So we couldn't use the simulation for animals that give birth to multiple babies, litters of babies, like cats and dogs, for example. sort of specific to, they include particular aspects of an animal's biology and its ecology.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so show us your simulation.
Yeah, so the name of the application is Close Kin Kapow. Close kin because we're looking at close family relationships. So kin is another term for family. And kapow.
What kind of word is it? Kin.
Kin. It's an English word, but it sounds, I'm not sure, but it sounds like, it reminds me of a Celtic.
Right.
So maybe Celtic in origins, yeah. So this, and the second part, kapow, comes from capture, recapture, power analysis. So capture, recapture is another term for mark recapture.
Right.
I prefer the term mark recapture because, for example, when you're talking about whales, you never actually capture them, but you mark them. In fact, you could argue that you're not really marking them, you're just taking tissue samples now. So you come up with an even better word.
Yeah, with this genetic analysis that you talked about.
And then the power analysis side refers to analyzing the statistical power of our estimators. So, so finding out how accurately the estimates capture the true values of the population size. So that's power analysis. So a powerful statistical method will give you very accurate estimates of the value you're interested in. So as I said, the app is a work in progress and it's quite complex. But the idea is that you can specify the values of certain parameters. So maybe the easiest one to start with would be the expected population size. So I choose a base year where I think that I have some idea about the size of the population that I'm interested in.
Right. So I think the bars that you're just moving them around, like birth rate and expected population size in base year. So it just makes it flexible to just, pick one and then, estimate the population size later. Or you have specific knowledge about the survival rate and birth rate and things like that.
That's right. So depending on, the features of the population you're interested in, your particular study and your statistical model may perform differently. So, for example,
because I see that survival rate here start from 0.9, so that should be a reason why. So you have some knowledge about that survival rate.
Yeah, you'll need to at least make a guess.
Right.
So, to understand why, if you imagine that your population is very small, then those kinds of populations are generally harder to study. It's hard to capture large samples, and so if you have smaller samples, in general, you've got less data, and your statistical methods are going to give you less accurate results. So the idea here is that you need to make some sort of guess about the population size, and usually ecologists have some idea about how big their population is.
Sure.
So that we can simulate a population which is reasonably close to the one we're interested in. So yes, that's why we have options here to change the survival rate, the birth rate. The population size in a particular year. So you may, an ecologist may have done some work already and come up with an estimate of the population size in 2010, for example. So say they think that in 2010 there were about 2,000 of these animals that they're interested in. They can select these values on these inputs, and then the population will be simulated so that on average the populations have that size.
Right.
We incorporate random or probabilistic behavior into the simulations. So you know, animals die with the probability given by the survival rate. So sometimes more animals die, sometimes fewer animals die, which means the population size will not always be the same. But we do it in such a way that the average population size will be what's selected in the inputs. So when you change these values, this information is about the last simulation you've run, and then down here we have information about.
And you've got some graphs, and do you want to talk about these graphs as well? Because it seems that, all right, it's a population size every year, all right. So just add a specific year show what's the expected population size.
Yeah, exactly. So I've selected in the inputs that my expected population size should be 2,000 in the year 2010. This is the showing the expected population size. We also have parameters that control the rate of population growth. So from this, knowing that the population size should on average be 2,000 in 2010, and knowing the population growth rate, we actually tells us the average population size at any year. And we also can select the length of the simulation. So here I've selected 60 years for my simulation, which means I've also selected so 60 years, the final year of the simulation is 2020.
Right.
So starting in 1961, and that'll give me 60 years.
Excellent.
So if you ignoring a lot of the other details here, but looking at the actual simulations. If we look at the last simulation I ran, which has this expected population size over time. After we've run the simulation, which you can do by clicking on the Simulate Studies button, we can then check that the simulation has done what we expected it to do. So if I go into the Check Simulation tab, and I'll go into the Populations subtab, it might just take a second to load up.
Oh, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, so this is showing the actual sizes of the populations that were simulated. So for this simulation, or for this data set, I simulated 1,000 studies, or 1,000 populations. And each of these pale gray lines shows the population size from one of those populations that I simulated. So there's actually 1,000 of these gray lines. You can see that there's variation between them, so they're not all the same. But you can see that the average, which is blue here for the mean, is in the middle, and the expected population size over time, which we were looking at when we were changing the inputs, has actually been covered by the blue average. So you can see that the average value is very close to what we requested it to be. And we selected the inputs. So these are populations that we've simulated. They vary in ways, they vary from each other in ways that we think are realistic and representative of variation in the real population we want to study. So when we put our statistical models to these populations, and we look at the different estimates that we get some idea about how accurate our model is going to be when we fit it to data from the real population.
Right.
So, for example, if we're not getting too complicated here, I'll show you. So here we've got some different parameters relating to the population that we've simulated. And we've got box plots showing the estimates from our models.
Right.
The model is a classical mark recapture model, so it just uses the mark recapture data.
Right.
And the close-kin model uses the data on the not just recapturing the same animal or resampling the same animal, but data on recapturing close family of that animal.
Right.
So parents or children or half brothers or half sisters. And without going into too much detail, you can see that the box plot for the older models is taller or wider than the box plot for the close-kin models. And what that means is that the estimates, the parameter estimates that we get from the close-kin models are generally closer to the true value. So what this is showing you is that these models give you more accurate estimates on average.
Right.
And we would say that they have greater statistical power, which is exciting, right? This is what
well, that's the power of a statistic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ecologists are interested in monitoring populations of wildlife. There can be different reasons. I guess the thing that comes to mind first to me is we have populations that are declining. It's actually a global emergency and the decline of biodiversity. So a very large number of species are going extinct, and that decline in biodiversity makes ecosystems much less resilient, and at a certain point ecosystems can collapse. We're actually a part of the ecosystem, so this is really important. So in order to manage ecosystems effectively, we need to have accurate information about those ecosystems, and one part of that is knowing how many of different kinds of animals are out there, and are the numbers going up or down. So in order to do that, we can collect data, but it's very difficult to actually count every member of any particular population. So you need statistical models to go from imperfect and limited data to accurate estimates of things like population size. And when new technology like genetic analysis comes along, gives us the ability to make those estimates in different ways and hopefully make more accurate estimates using new statistical models that incorporate that data. We need to test and check how accurate those models are, how accurate estimates from those models are likely to be. Well, first we need to check that the models really work. And one way to do that is by simulating populations on a computer and then fitting models to data from those populations and checking they give us the right results. So that's not an easy thing to do, but it's something that I and other statistical ecologists work on, And
That's
that's
what
where
this app is
how
about.
we can contribute to that solving that problem. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned something from it. Please don't forget to subscribe to our platform and support us to continue this work. If you have any feedback about this episode, I would love to hear it, so please leave a note for me. Also, if you have any suggestion to improving this work, I'm more than happy to hear that as well. Thank you for listening again, and see you in the next episode.